yn fawr i chi gyd am ddod heddi. Mae wedi bod yn anrhydedd i weithio gyda Lowri, Elinor, Sioned a Lestri i gael yr arddangosfa yma yn Sion. So, sa'n ni wedi dim byd rhagor, achos mae'r gwyn yn newydd popeth. So, thank you very much for coming. Hope you enjoyed the talk. It's been lovely working with Lowri, Elinor, Sioned and the Craft Centre. Again, feel free to ask any questions you may have at the end to Lowri or Elinor. And enjoy.
Diolch fawr, Rhian, a croeso lawr I gyd wrth ni. Now, if you understood correctly, there are some people here that aren't able to understand Welsh. Are we correct?
Please do not let that stop or inhibit you. It doesn't bother me.
No?
It's not an issue.
Please, carry on. Are you married, yeah?
Very happy, thank you.
Okay.
It's about bounce a little bit, can't we? We can. But yeah.
Funny, iawn. Wel, ie, ni wedi trio rhoi bach o drefn ar fyny hunain yn hyn yn ei bob cyfeiriad. Felly ni'n mynd I gael chydig o sgwrs gyntaf, a wedyn ni'n mynd I cyfle I chi ofyn unrhyw gwestiynau gyda chi. A ie, rhyw awr ar y mwyaf yw hwn I fod. Dwi ddim hofio'n oriawr fi, felly
Ystafell.
Ie, fi o'r trefnu. Ie, ond ni ddim yn fan chi hir, achos mae'n diwrnod hwyl tu allan a digon o bethau y pobl I wneud, dwi'n siŵr. Ond na I ddechrau sgwrs te, a dwi'n mynd I ofyn I ti Lowri I roi ychydig o gefndir personol di, fel dwi'n nabod di, ac gynulleidfa fel dwi'n nabod di. Felly, ie, jyst o rhyw dwynodau bach o dy hanes di, lle beth ti den, dy fagu, diddordeb yma mewn cael athrawnnau ac ati.
Diolch i'r profiad yn cyfnod. Fe ges i'n enni, wel, na hyn yn tafod fan hyn, so mae'n ffeir am Cartref Edros. Teg, a symud o'n cael yn anes I gyd yn Aberystwyth. Ond mi ges i'n stiwdio cyntaf I nôl yn Teg, felly mae'n lle gan fod brawn hadi yn byw na hefyd. Mae lle'n dal I ddal fy'n bach o, dal sysigrwydd. Ges I, yn maen yn Aberystwyth, gan bod y hanner ffordd yn hwn cartref mam. Felly, dwi'n cyfri lot o leoliadau gwahanol fel cefnsi o Bwysni, so Aberystwyth a Perich a Dyffryn ble mam yn dod o, a Chwmbendraeth hefyd fel dad nhw. Felly lot o arennau gwahanol, felly dim un cartre penodol a dwi'n bechach yn byw Caerdydd, a wedi bod yma ers dros 20 mlynedd. Yn myhofriad cyntaf I weithio gyda'n Crai, oedd yng Nghanolfan y Celfyddydau yn Aberystwyth. O'n i'n mor ffodus I gael y magu gyda Nghanolfan y Celfyddydau a Stephen yn drws ni. Felly mi fydden ni yn chwaer I mynd I wersi potri byddwn yn cael ei galw, so cydwchennaeth yn Nghanolfan y Celfyddydau fod y sadwn. O'n I wrth modd yn creu, ond o'n I wastad, o'n mor siomedig pan oedden nhw'n dod allan o'r cyn, achos oedden nhw jyst yn defnyddio fersiynau gwahanol o ffilm. A fel chi'n gweud, dwi'n berson, fi'n ei ddefnyddio'r ffilm, ond dwi'n berson lot fawr o liwiau. Felly, oedd jyst y teimlad na y diwedd, o Sion. So dyna, bod o'n i'n mwynhau defnyddio'r David, So dyna'n mhob cyntaf I defnyddio'r Crai. A wedyn nes I gyfyngu'r wedyn i'r cwrs sylfaen. Mae'n cael ei ddilynio, a'r adran dynameg wych na. Es I ddweud cwrs sylfaen, a fe chynnig neu gymaint bethau. Gofod y ddewis, mae rwy'n yn gadael yn ysgol. A mae y syniad yn ei cael yn eitha cil, a wedyn mae rwy'n yn cwrs sylfaen am flwyddyn, mae rwy'n ofo penderfynu beth I wneud, a mae'n gymaint o opsiynau. Fyddai'n ei bod yn hapus I wneud gymaint o bethau gwahanol, ond fel o'n i'n gweud, y cwrs cydameg yn dda iawn yn cyfyngu, a wedyn oedd y cwrs cynada yn Nghaerdydd. Nes I edrych ar gymaint o gyrsiau gwahanol, a yn y diwedd nes I ddewis y cyrsiau ddogau o'r wech gen I. A stud yn Nghaerdydd, a wedyn dwi bod yn gweithio yn Nghaerdydd wedyn ers yna, tua 2001, a treulio amser yn Stoke on Trent yn y canol yn astudio cwrs Lestri mewn dylunio cynameg. Felly dwi'n cael y nenu fwy gan fyd diwydiannol cynameg, yn fwy na studio potri. A studio potri oedd y byd oedd yn hwrs gynaddu, ond dyna beth sy'n cael ati. Felly, a wedyn dwi'n mewn ffordd gwneud gwaith diwydiannol ar raddfa bach iawn. A mae gwaith yn gweithio fel canvases, dwi'n cyfrifo fel canvases ar gyfer y medluniau. Dwi'n dal i ddefnyddio a peintio yn yr un dechneg a beth o'n i'n gwneud pan o'n i'n mynnig. Nath dad brynu bedd o ddefnyddio fi, so drawing pens, a set o baint yn ychyw pan o'n i'n mynnig, a dwi'n dal yn ddefnyddio yr union yr un dechneg. Fe nath o weithio a dwi'n dal i ddefnyddio'r technegau yna. Dyna ni, so wedi bod yn Nghaerdydd ers yna. So, na i basio cwestiwn draw i ti nawr, felly, a ddim os ydy ti sôn am dy gefnder di.
Na i sôn Saesneg felly wedyn tipyn bach. So, Lowri's talked about her upbringing and bits of her belong to different parts of Wales. I can share that experience with you, and we also have both of us connections with Aberystwyth and Cardiff. But whereas Lowri talking about her early level of ceramics, going to pottery classes at the Aberystwyth Art Centre, and then in the foundation course in Carmarthen, and then choosing ceramics as your path, really, as your creative and career path, and with a kind of sojourn, or however you say it, in Stoke-on-Trent for a master's degree in what? Is it illustration?
Ceramic design.
Ceramic design, yes. I'm talking as well about a fascination and love of kind of the industrial, processy side of working with ceramics and how that has influenced your work, but that you're still using the same techniques of drawing and illustrating on ceramic canvases that you were using as a child. So that's kind of Lowri's background. So my background as well as, in addition to sharing this kind of connection with a couple of places in Wales, I share, I guess, Lowri's love of creativity and art in many ways. My career has taken a very different path because I've chosen to study ecology and environmental law at various points during my career, and have spent all of my career really in those kinds of fields: conservation, nature conservation, and landscape management. But I've always been passionate about words and language as well, since I was very young, and like many people here, I'm sure, have been used to competing at steadfords, and it was just part of everyday life, using language and writing. And so alongside the career in nature conservation and landscape and heritage, I've always kind of somehow managed to weave in this passion for language and writing. Sometimes as part of the jobs I've been lucky enough to have, and sometimes alongside the mainstream career, really. So, I'm now living in Cardiff. I live at the other end of Wales, up near Carnarvon, in a 12-acre small holding, looking down over the Menai Straits and Bangor. So, very different environments now, shape our practices these days. But that's me in a nutshell, really. And so we'll talk about this project and how this project started off and how we came together, really. So, ti eisiau siarad Saesneg chydig bach falle? Okay. So, so if you could start and just talk a bit about how this project came about.
Right, okay, so I received a phone call, or numerous phone calls, like 2 years ago, by a TV company. And they were obviously really careful in how they communicated and were aware or familiar with communicating with artists and artists not wanting to take part, because it was quite an intimidating process to take part in this beautiful TV show called Cymru ar Canvas, Wales on Canvas, where artists portrayed celebrities. And I think they were on their third series. So I had this first initial gentle phone call asking if I was interested, and I mean, it seemed really daunting. I'd seen a few of them and I thought, I'm not sure if I can do this, because you're so open, the whole process, and the review as well, it all happens on film. But a few names were thrown about. And then Liz Saville-Roberts' name came up, and that really excited me. I thought, wow, yes, she's somebody who I look up to and who I would be delighted to meet and portray. I initially obviously think of the pink hair and thought how this could be portrayed, you know, she'd be interesting, she'd be visually interesting. And yes, so the process then started, and it was a very quick turnaround, maybe a month altogether. Meeting her, creating the collection, and then the big reveal with this fancy red cloth, you know, and she'd never seen the work before. It was all very intimidating. Not something that I was comfortable with at all, but the team, it was just a small team, and they were fab, and they made us feel very comfortable. And the first day that we met, they couldn't stop us from talking actually, so we got on really well, and they were like, whoa, stop talking now, and we want to catch this, so we clicked immediately. She's so interesting, so her background is interesting to me in that she did an art foundation in Camberwell. She was brought up in South London and considered carrying on doing art, but was, I want to use the word Sioned, enchanted by Wales and the Welsh language. Initially, because she read The Owl Service by Alan Garner. I don't know if any of you are familiar with The Owl Service. But strangely, it was written by Alan Garner whilst he spent time in the village where my mother brought up, in sort of a little hall or a little mansion house that looks down directly on my nan's farmhouse. Both are not connected. I mean, they were the landowners, but it wasn't kind of a fancy farm or anything. But it's quite, it's quite dramatic actually having to look at this fancy house, and then so that's where he spent time writing the book, and he would visit mine whilst he was writing the book. I think as a family we feel we have mixed feelings about the book and how the locals were portrayed. But anyway, that is the book that enchanted Liz. I'm just drove her to Wales. And we spoke about illustration and all sorts of things. She apparently still draws to relax, and will often doodle in the House of Commons as well. So the TV show happened. A bizarre experience, and then as it happened, so the director of Phillips saw the TV show, and then thought, oh, we could do something about this, or we can extend this. And they approached me about 3 years ago, saying, well, we've got this gallery space, we've got 7 windows, so we would like you to create 7 portraits. And immediately your name came up, so from the beginning, and Sioned's name, so the curator. So the project was handed to me, which was lovely. I'm a single mother, but I've got young children, you know, I had no ideas at the time, but to be presented with this idea just felt like such a gift. So we started on the project then, and Phil, we met, and Sioned and I met. Phil and I spoke for hours. I don't know if any of you know Phil is, but he enjoys talking about all sorts of things. Maybe gossip is quite a large part of it, but we shared ideas about possible women that we could portray. And the first one, the person that he suggested was Dolly, who's behind you here. Dolly Childs, a gardener who's based in Newtown, in Powys. And I'd never heard of her before. But most of the names were names that we started discussing about different categories of women. I felt strongly that the women needed to have, to be visually interesting, or were doing something that was visually interesting, and Dolly is the perfect example of that. So, and her background was very interesting, and so we started with her, and then the project then, I like to think of it as a quilt. So all of the women were not involved from the beginning. It was patching everybody together so that they all came together to create a collection of work.
Felly, fel chi'n clywed, mae wedi bod yn prosiect sydd wedi bod ar y gweill am 2 blynedd. Mae wedi bod yn prosiect, now it's a 3-year project, so an enormous amount of work. And in addition to as you mentioned, Sioned, the curator, hefyd, Lisa Heleth Jones made a little film, tucked away in the little alcove there. And we also, about halfway through, perhaps drew in a composer as well, who will be familiar to Welsh speakers, I'm sure, Robert Arwyn. And I just kind of felt how lovely it would be, and I love working in collaboration with other people, with other creative people. I thought, well, you're portraying in ceramic, and in your illustrations, so I'm trying to portray in words. Wouldn't it be wonderful? And Lisa and Phil, of course, and then wouldn't it be wonderful to have somebody portraying them in music as well, another medium, but essentially we're all trying to portray these wonderful women who make such a contribution to such a contribution to the life of Wales. And I'd heard Arwyn at a little event showcasing short pieces he'd made to compose to convey the flights of bees. And it was wonderful, just tiny short pieces. And this concept of a yoik had come to my mind. I don't know if anybody's heard about yoiks. It's something that belongs to Sami cultures. And when events happen in their cultural life, social life, or when somebody is born, the community creates a kind of sound. It's difficult to describe it quite as a song, but something that's unique to that person. It's half chant, half song, and it kind of records, an event or the arrival of the person. And I just thought, oh wow, I wonder if Arwyn would be willing to compose kind of personal yoiks in a very tuneful way for each of these 7 women. And he was game for it. And some of you might have already tried sitting in these lovely armchairs behind this pillar here. But when you sit down, you will hear Robert Arwyn's kind of musical pieces, 7 of them, one for each woman. So it has been a wonderfully collaborative project. Beth oedd yn ddiddorol I fi hefyd oedd, fel sy'n dweud, ti eisiau dewis merched amrywiol. We really wanted a diversity of women to portray. Ond oedd e ddim bob amser yn hawdd I ti ffeindio bobl. It wasn't that easy to come up with 7 people who were willing to be part of it.
Yeah. So o'n i'n dechrau gyda syniad, gan bod y sioe ddechrau yn Rhythyn ac yn Abertawe, o'n i'n trio meddwl am fenywod oedd yn gysylltiedig gyda'r I ddechrau. Felly o'n i'n meddwl am ymlaen gwahanol, amaethyddiaeth yn thema gydaeth, neu yn ymwneud gyda'r amgylchedd, cerddoriaeth, felly o'n i eisiau cael merch bydde'n perfformio. Oedd y delyn yn rhywbeth o'n i eisiau portray, o'n i'n teimlo gan bod nid bod y ceffil yn strwythyn mor, bod y ceffil yn ei fel mor amlwg yn ei bywyd I, a bydde y delyn yn chwarae y rôl eitha tebyg, o'n i'n chwarae delyn fel plentyn, telenores, a o'n i eisiau rhywun oedd yn wleidyddol hefyd yn ochr arall o Liz, so o'n i'n ymwybodol o'r balans yna, achos yn wleidyddol mi fydden ni'n fwy yn cael yn y pennig gan hi. Felly rhestra heleth o ferched. A dwi'n gwybod bod fi fel person cyfeirigol yn aml yn cael e-byst yn yr inbox. A felly bydde ddim yn amser iawn I ateb, os yw'n gwybod eitha gwahanol. Felly, oedd y broses o ffeindio merched yn y lle gyntaf, a wedyn cyfathrebu gyda nhw, a felly doedd ddim yn amser iawn I bawb. Felly oedd hwnna'n, byddwn ni'n dweud bod hwnna'n un o'r heriau mwyaf am y prosiect. Felly rhywbeth nad ydych chi'n gweld fan hyn, a rhywbeth nad ydych chi'n erioed wedi gwneud yn blaen, oedd gwaith ymchwil, a cysylltu, a danfon yr e-bost, a os am ymateb, neu falle bydde dim ymateb yn dod, a poeni am yr e-bost yn ni'n danfon, achos o'n i parch mawr at bob un o'n nhw, pawb o'n i wedi cysylltu gyda. Felly, ie. A wedyn, o'n yn arfer bach dod yn y gyd at gilydd fel y quilt yma, I ddangos elfennau gwahanol o brofiadau yn nhw yng Nghymru. Ond dwi'n gweud sawl gwaith yn meddwl, os ydym ni'n gwneud y prosiect, os ydym ni'n dechrau ffordd, mi fydda fe yn gasgliad hollol wahanol, achos mae bywyd yn merched newid. Falle fwy na dynion, mae ni'n ofalwyr ydyn ni, neu mae gorfforol, mae'n cyrff ni'n newid mwy, o falle bod ni'n cael plant, dwi'n gwybod bod John and Jack, and I'm left of the gŵr i'n dda iawn, efo dyddi ar ôl I fi chyfweld I, a o fi'n cyflentyn. Mae'n bywyd yn un amrywiaeth, so dwi yn meddwl, yes, ni'n dechrau fory, mi fydde fe'n gasgliad hollol wahanol fy nywod. Mae sawl un o'r hyn wedi cael profiadau mawr yn ystod y 2 blynedd diwetha, a mi fydde fe wedi newid. Felly mae'n olwg penodol o amser penodol.
Yes, I found it interesting when Lowri shared the fact that not everybody was willing to be portrayed. I thought everybody would jump at the chance to be portrayed, especially having seen the set. Liz Roberts' set is just behind somebody, I think, in hot colours there. And yeah, you do wonder whether, you're talking to women, or whether if you were talking to men, the response might have been different. Or whether it was okay. Perhaps a bit more reticent, perhaps, to kind of push ourselves forward. Yeah. But there are multiple reasons why perhaps people weren't quite happy to take part, saying, we change a lot as women, we have different responsibilities. The time has to be right to participate in this kind of project. So that
also your portrait is different. Eleanor's portrait has been split up during the show, so part of it's in the shop and part of it's in the gallery. But you requested not to have your actual portrait. Yes. And these collections are not just the face, it's more about that. So it's more than, it's a collection, it's about their lives as well. It's not just their face straight on. So it's and I really enjoyed creating yours. It's completely different then, because you don't need to see the person as well in some ways. So
I'm glad you felt that as well.
I think I did something the same.
Great o, felly, nawn ni symud mlaen te sôn am technegau, ti eisiau dechrau, ti eisiau fi sôn am yr elfen geiriau?
Cydwch ti dechrau?
Okay. So, I suppose, what I was bringing to the project was this kind of language, word element, and firstly, you were kind of pretty certain about how you're going to approach the techniques you're going to be using, having worked on Liz's set. Perhaps it was less clear what I was going to be doing as part of the project. And at the beginning, I'm not sure whether Philip thought I'd probably end up writing a poem for each of the 7 women. Possibly he thought that. But when I talked with the curator about my role, even from the beginning I thought, I'm not sure if that's what I am going to do for this project. Knowing the women you'd chosen, I suppose part of me felt that, if these were going to be shown in various parts of Wales, would everybody know who these women are or were? I knew quite a few, but I knew others wouldn't be so familiar with these characters and the names.
Neither of us knew any of them personally.
No, but we knew of them, and you found out
more about
them in your research. And I just thought, well, perhaps I should try and compose a little portrait of them, so that we had a portrait in words to help interpret your works and to inform Dr. Allen's musical compositions. And I thought, well, if the poems come, they'll come, but I did want to prepare these little kind of portraits. And I was quite keen on trying to create portraits in the women's own words as well. And so, for this element, because you went to visit them on your own to have a chat and do your sketches and take photographs. So I asked Lowri if she'd record the conversations with the women, and then I had these interviews to transcribe, and I ended up with a massive lump of about something like 450,000 words to work with. So that was my raw material. So it's interesting, I think of you kind of building up these sets out of porcelain clay, and I started with this huge mass of words, and I'm trying to erase it down, whittle it down to create little portraits. And it was a challenging process because you want to be respectful to the people whose voices you're using, you want them to, I really wanted them to sound like the women talking. So you wanted to keep their own individual ways of speaking and the kind of idiosyncrasies or the little filler words we all use in sentences, but sometimes we fill our sentences with loads of kind of filler words. How many of these shall I keep in? How many likes shall I keep in the sentence? All those little kind of editorial decisions, I suppose, of trying to keep that original voice. So I ended up with these portraits in the women's own voices. For the panels you will see on the back wall, we needed something even shorter, so I wrote those little panels drawing from the little interviews in the women's own voices, but all of those own voice portraits are in the catalogue, and I love them because I can hear them talking, you know, I think they're so personal and so lovely, and I hope I've done justice to them, and yeah, can try to paint them as full and rounded characters and the lovely, wonderful people that they are. I did compose a few poems. We'll end the session with one I wrote for Lowri, but I'll just read two poems, shortish poems in Welsh. Five of the interviews were in Welsh, so I translated those the portraits into English. And then the interviews and for the portraits, the original portraits with two of the women, Crystal Lowe and Noblette Story Childs, were in English. And rather than translate those, because unfortunately as bilingual Welsh English speakers that we can read the English one, so I thought I'll compose a Welsh poem rather than do a translation of those. So I'll just quickly read these two poems. So one for Crystal, who is a dancer, choreographer, writer, based in Newport, South Wales, and such a talented, such an energetic woman. But what really struck me about her interview and her conversation with you was the piece where she was talking about finding out she was pregnant, and I'm thinking, I'm not ready for this. I'm not ready to be a mother. My career is kind of just beginning to take shape, and now this is happening to me. I wanted it, but I'm not sure if I do want it. All that kind of in a turmoil, and then realising, things weren't going quite well with the pregnancy towards the end, and she's been in hospital, and it's just seeing and hearing his sort of kind of heartbeat on the screen, and that's when she kind of fell in love with the baby. So that's the background. So, Curiadau. Mewn byd a deimlau yn chwythu'r weithiau, roedd cysur mewn dawns i blentyn saith oed, a llif ei symud ar hyd y dyddiau yn sgriptio ein stori mor ysgafnroed. Llamodd yn eog rhwng cyfandiroedd, neidiodd yn frwd at bob cyfle o'i blaen. Heriodd gonfensiwn a grym ei gwerthoedd, gweithiodd ag eiriau i roi lliw o gran. Annisgwyl oedd trynder y cwmwl a laniodd i dwyllu ei llwyfan a tharbio'r holl hyd. Gofidiau a droellau drosodd a throsodd am enni i bach a chwalu ei byd. Ond gwrando curiad ei galon fechan, mae ffili weld, mae hwn fyddai hafan. That's the poem of Crystal. And then Noblette Story Childs, where he has a beautiful garden in Midtown. What struck me from her conversation, she comes from Jamaica, the importance of her grandmother in her life. Absolutely fundamental to all her life decisions and her worldview, really. And the garden is a project, she says, that brings her closer to her grandmother. That's where she feels a connection with her grandmother and with Jamaica, her home as well. So this is the poem for Noblette. Presenoldeb. Mae hi yma, yng nghanol y chwerthin a'r cebran sydd yn glywed o ben draw gardd Bryn Teg, ac yn murmu'r y lleisiau bach, wrth iddyn sibrwd cyfrinachau rhwng tafodau gwirfion y dau. Fe'i clywaf yn seiniau'r chwarae cuddio, ac yn y brwsio'n geiriau sy'n chwythu rhwng y bonion tal, cyn disgyn yn haen o'r ynynau ysgafn dan ganop i'r hydyngoed. Gwelaf ei gwen yn y crychni chwareus ar un y pwll, a chlywed ei symudiadau yn y diberion glaw sy'n bitian, partian ar hyd y llwybrau, fel sŵn camau pantos fychan. A dim ond i ni gerdded drwy drws cefn, i ganodd y llain o'r drysorau lliwgar, gallaf deimlo gwres ei hanwes yn lacio amdanaf, yn flanced o atgofion cynnes, heb bod angen rhywun llun yn fy mhoced i brocio'r cof. Mama, ty dyma atau. Beth yn cael clonc unwaith eto am bobl a chymdogion, am adre ac am blanhigion. Tyd i ni rannu difyrwch a hwyl hen gwmniaeth, a gad i ni ddiolch drwy niwl y blynyddoedd am dyrodd o lynyddwch oes. There we are, so that's a bit about my practice and approach to the whole project. Wedyn na I brysgwyddo i tir, wedyn i sôn am y dechneg gyda'r gwaith seramig. Ti'n cofio ti'n sôn am dy hoffder o luniadu a bod hwnna wedi chwarae rhan fawr. Oedden ti'n awyddus i arbrofi gyda dechnegau gwahanol, ti'n meddwl? Neu nes i ddarganfod trwy dechnegau gwahanol?
Dwi'n meddwl gan fod casgliad les wedi cael ei greu barod, oedd hwnna'n rhyw fath o... Oedd eisiau cael yn beth oedd y gweddill angen bod. So oedd dim yn patrwm tebyg, ond fe nes i dreinio lot o amser yn dylunio ar gyfer y prosiect yma na bydd rili oed wedi gwneud y blaen. Felly, a mewn ffordd, gallwn ni'n ma'n oedd yn hyfed yn ôl a tynnu'r hun allan, achos oedd Liz wedi derbyn y casgliad, a dys nhw'n allan yn hythyn, a ni fel, oedd yna lot llai o ddefnydd na be wedi creu'r peth. Achos oedd dim ond y mis yna gen i, so bydd amser yn eitha penodol. Ond nes i wir mwynhau peindio. Ond erbyn y diwedd, o'n i wir eisiau dod â elfennau o weithio gyda pwslin hefyd. Felly mae gweithio gyda slip, gwaith sydd wedi cael ei gastio, yn eitha gwahanol. So dwi'n ddim yn teimlo'n clai. Ond erbyn y diwedd, o'n i wir eisiau arbrofi. A yn fan hyn, mae yna elfennau gwahanol yn yna, so mae mwy o brofi wedi bod yna beth oedd yn hythyn. Y peintio bwysig iawn, a dylunio bwysig iawn. Oedd Elin yn sôn fyna ynglyn â y broses o sgwennu, a oedd yn mynd â fi nôl y feint i'r cam cychwyn, ble o'n i'n mynd at merched, ac o'n i'n treulio falle 2 awr yn eu cyfweld nhw, a Elin yn wastad yn ymhenni. O'n i'n aml yn siarad mewn y tap o Elin, fel siarad cyfeirio ato ti, o'n i'n ymwybodol iawn bod ti'n clywed beth o'n i'n sôn am. A wedyn, yn wahanol i Elin, oedd hi'n derbyn y recordiadau yma, o'n i'n mynd i ffwrdd gyda delweddau a sketches. Fel o'n i'n sôn, mae'r casgliadau i gyd yna, so mae portreadau yn bartreadau yn eich hand, dwi'n ddim jyst gwyneb, so meddwl am Liz o'r man cychwyn, mi oedd hi'n siarad yn lot am eitha ci. So Liz mentioned her grandfather a lot, and on the jug on the right-hand side was the authority of Salisbury Cathedral. He was a master craftsman there. So, and then horses are very important. Mama Neville, the Peninsula, is very important. And then the second portrait that I created, or the first one for this project, was Novelet Childs, or Dolly Childs. So she has quite a relatively small garden in Newtown, and but she's created this Caribbean haven. Not all the plants are what she would have had growing up, but a lot of them look similar, so some of the leaves are similar, so she's tried to create a garden that is as similar as possible to what she grew up with. Her collection was obviously green because her garden is beautifully luscious and green. The next person that I worked on was behind me here, so Angharad here. Angharad's collection is quite different because it's in 2 parts, and I do see her in 2 parts, and I think we both did. So the political activist and the writer for adult books, for adult novels, but also who worked for children, so her more playful work. So the work has been separated. Sadly, the day that I went to visit her, the weather was quite dark. It was it was cloudy, wet. But before going, I knew that Angharad needed to be portrayed in a more colourful way because I do see her in that way. So I played a lot of experimenting with Helen and wrote it down. And then y nesa wedyn, yn Nancy'n wahanol, achos Nancy Richards, achos Nancy dyn nhw'n gyd sydd yn hyn. Nes i ystyried sawl pelnod wahanol. Ond oedd nain yn ffrindiau dad yn Nancy, a Nancy'n mynd i ymweld â nain. Ac nain ydi, fy comedio hi, nain yn hoff iawn, nain yn dim teledu yn nhw, dim pethau high-tech, oedd hi'n hoffi tynnu ffiniau a fi'n hoffi fy comedio. Oedd yn modern i'n chwarae delyn hefyd. Felly, oedd hi gwaith yn chwilio wahanol achos oedd angen edrych yn hen ffilmiau, hen recordiadau, felly dreifus i amser yn cyfnod cymryddol. Felly stills o ffilms yw lot o delweddau. A mae'n chwilio hefyd yn adlewyrchu'r cyfnod. So adlewyrchu'r cyfnod ble oedd teledu rhyw yn dechrau, yw'r asled yma mewn ffordd. Oedd yna sawl ffilm ti a Gwynn hefyd, ond dyna pan mae'n chwilio'n eitha bach, ac mae'n adlewyrchu'r cyfnod yna. Gymeriad nawr, a mae yna lyfr i gael o fewn y cwpl Nancy, so un o'r hoff lyfrau yn Gymraeg, a hwnna'n cael ei ddefnyddio gan y ddwy ni ar gyfer.
Talking about the cwpl artist Nancy Richards, the only one that Lowri wasn't able to converse with because she was passed away, so I should mention that. For her portrait, for your portrait, you used stills and archive material and used a kind of autobiographical book of Nancy, and I used that same book then to kind of whittle down to create the written portrait. So, yeah.
And all of these collections are being committed to, well, given as gifts to the women afterwards, but Nancy's collection will be given to the National Library. And then, without me here. Wedyn, I don't know, so Georgia Lewis yn y Melin, Georgia yn wahanol, gafon ni'r un addysg, ac roedd cyn i wain addysgwyr, ond oedd i ddau blynyddoedd yn iawn yn hi, so ni'n gyfarwydd iawn yn hi. Ond falle pan mae Georgia wedi gweithio gymaint gyda pobl sy'n creu i gwaith celfi ar gyfer album, cloi album o'r math yna beth, oedd hi'n benodol iawn yn llun a sut oedd hi eisiau cael ei ffortreu, hyd yn oed pa liw oedd hi eisiau. Felly Melin, Cynllun, Eithin, oedd yn byddodol iawn weithio fy hi, hi oedd yn un oedd yn syth oedd hi fel yn bendant fel hyn, yn un off i cael yn ffortreu. Felly nes i dreifio tipyn amser yn mhas yn rhyw, a yn Cynllun, felly mae'n dylunio o Aberdalon, golygfeydd gwahanol ym Mhenllyn, a fe nes i fynd i Plas yn Hyw, sef Team National Trust ym Mhenllyn, un o'n hoff da National Trust i, a mae'n gestled hyfryd o set coffi Limoges yna, a mae'n digwydd bod yn melyn a dydd, felly mae'n edrych fel nod yn y casgliad i'r gwaith yna, a mae'n ddarn bach yn ffrennydd o dan i gwaith ni hefyd. A wedyn...
We'll just recap quickly. So Lowri's talked there about the first step was novelette, Child, Newtown, the beautiful garden, where she's recreated the atmosphere of Jamaica. And the garden she also opens up to the public and has done a lot with mental health over the years. Then this set created for the political activist Angharad Thomas, but she's also a children's book author and illustrator. So we played around with colour there to bring that into the collection. So we've also got Nancy's collection. Around the corner is a collection for Georgia Ruth, a composer, singer and author now as well. And she was very definite about the colour she wanted. The only one who was really definite. She wanted lots of yellow, she wanted Pennllyn, Cleveland so depicted, and also the beautiful house that the National Trust now has. Class and Hill, the home of the three Keaton sisters who used to serve Battenberg with lots of yellow in that.
I don't know if you've seen the Battenberg plate, but there's a slight nod in the...
Is there?
So we had Battenberg for one of the events, and I created a plate with the pattern, and it's just been in there.
Yeah.
And then the next person that I portrayed was Crystal Lowe. Her interview was really interesting, and it says a lot about this project because her son, she's a single mother, her son was with her doing the interview. So, and he's friendly, and he was doodling away whilst we were chatting, and his mark making is part of the project as well. So a lot of the drawings are of her movement, so her moving and his movement as well. So a lot of colour. She's originally from Bermuda and came to Wales to Ballet Cymru for, beth y gair, ysglafiaeth. Scottish for, Ballet Cymru has stated, so is based in Newport. She's also drawn to the Clean Peninsula. So 3 of these individuals here are drawn to the Clean Peninsula, interestingly, and maybe none of them were brought up on the Clean Peninsula. Yes, and then the last person to play was Dr. Leon Reynolds, incredibly interesting woman. Works for Cadw, but is her background and her main interest is in the Neolithic period. So I spent a day drawing in 2 burial chambers on Anglesey, so Bryn Cechyddu and Bartloden Gawres, Curadwyd places. So Bryn Cechyddu is her favourite location. And so her collection is quite, and you'll see mushrooms as well. She's an avid collector of mushrooms.
Absolutely, and she has a very interesting role with Cadw. Her role now at the moment is bringing the arts into Cadw's kind of historic sites as a way of deepening people's engagement really with history and Wales's history specifically. So she's got this massive interest in fungi and alternative kind of worldviews, and spent time with shaman in South America, and is currently writing a book on the role of fungi in our lives as people.
To say how she enjoys searching for fungi, because with the Neolithic there's hardly nothing left.
Yeah.
And how, that excitement, she gets that from, searching for, fungi. So,
Should we have our answer? Oh, no, right. Maybe, I'll just finish with one question then, and then everybody can ask us a question from the floor. I remember you saying when we were chatting that you weren't sure if the whole collection would be successful until you saw it in place, in Rhythm. So I was going to ask you, did you feel that you'd succeeded, and have you changed anything for the mission exhibition? But while you just think about that, I said I'd read my final poem, and I will do that, because it's a poem to you, Lowri, and it's my favourite poem after visiting Lowri in the Files Clay Studio in Cardiff. So it's up on the wall there, and I'll just read it out. Again, it's in Welsh, and it's just about Lowri in her studio and seeing you in your workplace and all these Lestri, all these kind of vessels, various stages of production. Felly, dyma ni, 24 Tiwdor un. Os ewch chi chwilio ymlaen yr afon, tu ôl i'r tai, hyd strydoedd cilion, ar hyd un rhes o fan busnesau sy'n swatio'n gler i slaw y cledrau. Fe sylwch ar leoedd sy'n rhenti moduron, ysbysfwrdd hardd rhyw beintiwr arwyddion, lle trisio beics a gweithdau seiri, lle codi ceginer, lle adfer ffenestri. Ac y fan lle mae giraff yn syllu drwy ffenest siop llawn ffug dacsiderni, byddewch efallai o hyd Iwerddon yn warin o studios mewn gwyrdwi heddychlon. Yn ofod tawel, yn llawn tanbeidrwydd dros bwer crefft, dros greadigrwydd, a bwrlwm di-ddiwedd o weithiau yn crasu yng nghwmbil o dynnau sy'n iddydd ei gasu. Mewn encil o stafell, yng nghanol ei phethau, mae wrthi yn bywyd yn siapio syniadau, ei meddwl a'i bysedd yn prysur gydweithio tra bod trenau Caerdydd yn carlamu heibio. Dal osgo ar glai, dal ystyr bywydau, dal lleoedd bob dydd mewn palet o liwiau, a throi y poslen drwy ei braslyniau, yn lliaws bywiog o gymeriadau. A thandda'n diwedd dydd o ymlafnio, awr homian brat a sychu dwylo, awr cael pen y mwdl, rhoi taw ar bob clefar, a cholio'r hen feic mas trwy ddrws 24. Fe ddaw, drwy dwll bach clo o studio, swy llestri cain yn dal ei sgwrsio. Gair o, mae'n ti final words. Are you happy with the collection? Have you changed anything in the exhibition?
I think, well, working towards anything, it was like driving at 80, maybe 90 miles an hour, just driving and then stopping. But here there's been time to, yes, think. So yeah, a few changes, but I've managed to create some little things, which is a technique that I learned from Matt, maybe 10 years ago. And I've also been able to make some more experimental porcelain kits as well, which, there was no time. There was no time, so much time spent on these collections. I would like to say, so for me this project is quite different to what I've done before. I've never collaborated in such a way before. The word collaboration, very important for my Lestri. So many of us working together, and really fortunate that we all got on really well, and that the project has just flowed, and it's been just such an honour being able to work with somebody who works in quite an isolated way normally. So it's been, yes, that's been the highlight definitely of this project, and that's not including meeting all of these women, getting to know these incredible women. So creating portraits, my portraits, and then the words and the sound, and working with an incredible curator and he as well, working in this beautiful space. So this exhibition feels very different to Within, and I think I'm happy with it here. I think the work fits better. You can see the portraits better. So it's a relief to see it all there.
Diolch yn fawr. Diolch yn